From what has been shown above, it follows that God necessarily wills his being and his goodness and cannot will the contrary. For it has been shown above that God wills his being and his goodness as the main object, which is another reason for his will. Therefore, in everything that is desired, it wants its own being and its own goodness, just as sight sees light in every color. Now it is impossible for God not to will something actually, for he would be willing only in power, which is impossible, since to will is to be one's own. It is necessary, therefore, that he wills his being and his goodness. Again, everyone who wills necessarily wants his ultimate end, just as a man necessarily wants his happiness and cannot will misery. But God wills himself to be like the ultimate end, as is clear from what has been said. He therefore necessarily wills himself to be, and cannot will himself not to be. Further, in the appetitive and in the operative, the end is in this way like the undemonstrable principle in the speculative. For as conclusions are concluded from principles in the speculative, so in the active and appetitive the reason of all actions and desires is taken from the end. But in speculative understanding, the understanding necessarily agrees with indemonstrable first principles, the opposites of which cannot be agreed in any way. Therefore, the will necessarily adheres to the ultimate end, so that it cannot will the contrary. And so, if the divine will has no other end than itself, it necessarily wills itself. Still, all things, insofar as they are assimilated to God, who is the first and greatest being. But all things, insofar as they are, naturally love their being in their own way. Therefore, God naturally loves his being much more. But its nature is by itself necessary being, as was proved above. God, therefore, of necessity wills himself to be. In addition, all the perfection and goodness that exists in creatures belongs essentially to God, as has been proved above. Now, to love God is the highest perfection of a rational creature, since by this in some way he is united to God. Therefore, it is essentially in God. Therefore, he loves himself out of necessity. And so he wants to be.